Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Welcome. So, yeah, you can sit on any of the benches if you like. Yeah, give him some books. Prabhu, can you open this door back here? Get a little. Maybe someone will come. You never know. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 28th day of July, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 6, Dhyāna-yoga, text 29 at the bottom of page 281. Okay. Sarvabhuta Stham Atmanam Sarvabhutani Chatmani Ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha. Go ahead. Sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha. You want to try it, Daniel? Sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha. Naga? Okay, all right. That's all right. Prabhu, go ahead. Not today? Okay. Go ahead. Sarvabhutastamatmanam sarvabhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha. Okay, I'll read the synonyms myself. You can read along. Sarvabhutastam, Sarvabhutastam, situated in all beings, Atmanam, the Supersoul, Sarva, all, Bhutani, entities, Cha, also, Atmani, in the self, Ikshate, does see, Yoga Yukta Atma, one who is dovetailed in Krishna consciousness, Sarvatra, everywhere, Samadarshanaha, seeing equally. Daniel? It's too much sound pollution. God, crazy. Translation. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, the self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. Purport. A Krishna-conscious yogi is the perfect seer because he sees Krishna, the Supreme, situated in everyone's heart as the Supersoul or Paramatma. Ishvarak Savabhutanam Riddeshe Arjuna Tishtati. The Lord in his Paramatma feature is situated within both the heart of the dog and that of a Brahman. The perfect yogi knows that the Lord is eternally transcendental and is not materially affected by his presence in either a dog or a Brahman. That is the supreme neutrality of the Lord. The individual soul is also situated in the individual heart, but he is not present in all hearts. That is the distinction between the individual soul and the supersoul. One who is not factually in the practice of yoga cannot see so clearly. A Krishna-conscious person can see Krishna in the heart of both the believer and the non-believer. In the Smriti, Sattvata Tantra 349, this is confirmed as follows. At-tatat-vach chamatradvad atma hi paramo harihi. The Lord, being the source of all beings, is like the mother and the maintainer. As the mother is neutral to all different kinds of children, the Supreme Father or Mother is also. Consequently, the Supersoul is always in every living being. Outwardly also, every living being is situated in the energy of the Lord. As will be explained in the 7th chapter, the Lord has primarily two energies, the spiritual or superior and the material or inferior. The living entity, although part of the superior energy, is conditioned by the inferior energy. The living entity is always in the Lord's energy. Every living entity is situated in him in one way or another. The yogi sees equally because he sees that all living entities, although in different situations according to the results of fruit of work, in all circumstances remain the servants of God. While in the material energy, the living entity serves the material senses, and while in the spiritual energy, he serves the Supreme Lord directly. In either case, the living entity is the servant of God. This vision of equality is perfect in a person in Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timarandrasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, Krishna is now, in his actually previous verse, he was also seeing that. In the next verse, he'll also talk about seeing. And the idea is that if one is accomplished, because he's describing the accomplished yogi here, he becomes enlightened. That favorite word, enlightened, means that the knowledge increases. He sees differently. I always like to give this example, that we sometimes forget that our knowledge affects what we see and how we see what we see. I remember when I was a kid, I grew up on Long Island, so we periodically would go and visit the museums in Manhattan. You know, there's the Modern Museum of Art and Metropolitan Museum, so many museums. And I remember, you know, they had some expensive, you know, first-class pictures. There's a Rembrandt, you know, I can pretty much pick up what's going on in there, you know, I think. You know. Of course, I didn't know the historical background, what the different kinds of garb mean and everything like that. But still, it was something. And I remember this one painting, maybe you know this painting, by Picasso. And I think it was during the war that he painted it, or shortly thereafter. Guernica. Does that ring a bell with anyone? Guernica. It was a painting of a little town in Spain, I believe it was, that was being bombed by the Nazis or something like that. So it was just, you know, a very affecting painting. You could see it was a little abstract, but he caught the terror, and the whole scene was very impressive. So later on, my parents bought me, in high school, they bought me a set of books about painting, about fine art, you know, historically, the Europeans and everything. And I learned so much about what's going on in these paintings. And the next time I actually saw them in the museum, I saw them differently because I understood. And you can pick up from here. If someone walks into the temple for the first time, they see, well, these are, you know, first-class paintings, but they really don't know what's going on. A devotee, now Prabhupada, you know, he said he was so anxious to have paintings. He was somewhat of an artist also. I don't know if you know that. And he, when he found that, you know, Jadharani came and she was pretty good already, you know, he was so happy that especially for the books, but also just to hang up in the temples, you know. And he saw these paintings as windows to the spiritual world. In other words, he would see this painting, this beautiful painting of Lord Chaitanya and Panchatattva dancing in, you know, Navadvip. And he would actually experience it. He could barely hear the drums playing, you know, like that. Because he's seeing with knowledge and realization. Someone walks in the temple, they see this painting of Ram and Sita and Lakshman in the back there. Not quite sure what's going on, you know. Okay, you know, like there's a couple there in the forest there. It looks like he's a fighter. He's got the big bow. That's pretty far out, you know. But it doesn't really mean something. Huh? The golden deer is there. The golden deer. Oh, the golden deer is. Oh, she's saying, "Go get me the deer." Okay. So yeah, someone who knows the story. Yeah, I see the deer now. It means so much more. You see, through the eyes of knowledge, your whole vision changes. And for the pure devotee, he sees everything with the eyes of knowledge. Doesn't in the CC there's a verse. He doesn't just see a tree, he sees Krishna. Why? Just as Prabhupada explained, the body of the tree is the energy of Krishna, and that tree, it's a living entity. There's a soul in there. Consciousness is very much covered, and so in this way you see everything differently. And as he sees other human beings as through compassion, he said, how can I give them a little Krishna consciousness or a lot of Krishna consciousness? Somehow. Because Prabhupada would. I was recently. I listened to, as I mentioned a lot, Prabhupada lectures all the time. So there was. I think I may have seen this on the YouTube, when following Srila Prabhupada or something like that. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a wonderful series. And it was explaining how Prabhupada was walking somewhere in maybe it was Mexico or in Spain somewhere, but the language was Spanish. And then when people would see him, they would walk by and they would say, "Buenos dios," which I think means good morning, good day, right? Dios is good day, right? Is it? So Prabhupada asked, what are they saying? Because they're actually, he would say good morning, they would say buenos dias. So they're saying good morning in Spanish, buenos dios. I mean, buenos is good, like that. So next time he saw someone, he said buenos dios. Because he wanted them to relate to him, even a moment's association with a pure devotee, So the point is that just like, you can understand so simply, what does a child really see, He sees all kinds of things that aren't his mother. And then when he sees his mother, oh, okay. He's got a completely different vision of the world because of what he's seeing. So one who is Krishna conscious, truly Krishna, and sees through the eyes of Shastra, the Shastra chakshus, then you have a different vision of the world and different vision of your place in the world. And that's what he's talking about here. A true yogi means that someone who's achieved this samadhi platform that he described in text 22 to 20 to 23. Then he's seeing differently. A true yogi observes me in all beings and also sees every being in me. Indeed, a self-realized person sees me, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. So how does he see every being in Krishna? Well, Prabhupada explains, because it's all the energy of Krishna. You see? We're all walking through this material energy, different kind, but it's all Krishna's energy. So he's present everywhere. You can see the effect of the Lord. And he takes the opportunity to, a little bird will come by, or maybe you give him a little prasadam, start his, you see, this bird is just like me, ultimately, as a soul. But due to his activities and his consciousness, he took that body, So this is a wonderful way of seeing. And Prabhupada, when he started his movement, he saw, it doesn't matter that they're Americans, that they don't know anything about the Brahminical standard or anything, They're spirit souls, and they're eligible to advance in Krishna consciousness. And that's the essence of Lord Chaitanya's movement. Nobody is excluded. What is that famous verse, those who know it can chant it? Nam nam akari bahudani jasarva shaktis tatrapitani hamitak smadanena kalaha etadrishita vakripa bhagavan mamapi durdaiv midashamiha janinanuragaha. Now, okay, so the first part of the verse has that very important phrase, there's no restriction as to time, and it implies time when you can chant, or candidate when you can chant, or any place you can chant. We learned pretty early on, and this is also in the CC, that you can chant the Hare Krishna mantra even in the bathroom. Don't chant anything else, but chant the Hare Krishna mantra. It's so powerful and so pure that it's not an offense, you see. So, but this verse says, basically, there's no restriction to time, place, or circumstance when you can chant Hare Krishna. It's always appropriate. And especially there's no restriction to candidate. If you want to go perform some Vedic sacrifice, you have to have a certain character, or you have to hire so many Brahmins to chant the mantras perfectly, And if you don't have all those things, if you risk mispronouncing, then you get the opposite effect, But there's a verse about pronunciation which ends in the famous phrase, Bhava Grahi Janardana. You ever heard that one? Daniel's very sincere, but he's a little... Bhava means your feeling. Grahi means appreciates or grasps. Janardana. Krishna sees the feeling that you're doing with it. And it's all about pronunciation. It says, Murke Vadati Vishnaya. Dhiro Vadati Vishnave. See, grammatically, Vishnu is an exception. Just like we say, Namam Vishnu Padaya. This is a vocative form. Vishnu Padaya. So the Murka, the fool, he's not so educated. He said, okay, Vishnu Vishnaya. But no, Vishnu that's an exception. The vocative is Vishnave. You see. So the fool says that, and the learned Brahmin says Vishnave. I forget the rest of the Sanskrit, but it says, but they both achieve the same goal, the same result, if they're both chanting sincerely, because Bhava Grahi Janardana. Because Janardana, Krishna is looking for the mood that you're in. You see. We just read this morning about Raghunandana Thakur. It's a great story. His father, I forget his name, but told them, he's living in, he's a very nice Vaishnava, and they have an altar, and it's time, they're going to have to make an offering for the morning prasadam. So the father has an errand to perform. So he tells his young boy, maybe he's 4 years old or something, make the offering, and make sure that the deity eats the prasadam. Okay. So the boy made the offering, and then he kept peeking in, and the prasadam was still on the plate. So he got very upset. The deity wasn't eating the offering. So he was crying. He was saying, "Please, please eat the offering." So he did. The deity actually ate the offering. So the father comes back and says, "Oh, can I have some Mahaprasad?" So he said, "Oh, the deity ate everything." He says, "What?" Father said, "Really?" So he looks and there's nothing there, So then he asked him to cook again, and he made some. So then later on, and so he recognized how advanced his little child was, because he really had such a relationship with the Lord that the Lord responded that way. It's not the usual thing. So later on, when Lord Chaitanya met Raghunandana, he says, "Who's the son and who's the father?" So he said, "Oh, the little boy, he's the father," in the sense that he's more advanced spiritually because he moved Krishna to actually eat the offering. So anyway, maybe got a little far afield from this verse. But the idea is that seeing with knowledge, that as we advance in devotional service, we see ourselves certainly differently. We see everyone else as a spirit soul, not their body. And we see the world differently. The birds and bees and everything, these poor trees standing here. I've been here since 1989, and the same trees are still standing guard, And sometimes the wind blows and they drop so much stuff, they have to clean it up. But they're living entities, And sometimes when I take my walk, forgive me, I'm a little bit sentimental, I kind of just, I'm chanting and I'm reaching out to the trees and just touching the trees, Giving him a little association. All right, any questions on this verse? Which one? We did 29, right? All right, let's do 30. Yomam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mahi pashyati tasyahang na pranashyami sachame na pranashyati. Now this is a great verse because it's a little poem here, it's a little verse here. For one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am never lost, nor is he ever lost to me. Purport: a person in Krishna consciousness certainly sees Lord Krishna everywhere, and he sees everything in Krishna. Such a person may appear to see all separate manifestations of the material nature, but in each and every instance he is conscious of Krishna, knowing that everything is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. Nothing can exist without Krishna, and Krishna is the Lord of everything. This is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness, let me read that again. Nothing can exist without Krishna, And Krishna is the Lord of everything. It's the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the development of love of Krishna, a position transcendental even to material liberation. At this stage of Krishna consciousness, beyond self-realization, the devotee becomes one with Krishna in the sense that Krishna becomes everything for the devotee, and the devotee becomes full in loving Krishna. An intimate relationship between the Lord and the devotee then exists. In that stage, the living entity can never be annihilated, nor is the personality of Godhead ever out of sight of the devotee. To merge in Krishna is spiritual annihilation. A devotee takes no such risk. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita 538. Premanjana chudita bhakti vilochanena santas sadaiva hridayeshu vilokayanti yang shama sundaramachindu gunasparupam govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship the primeval Lord, Govinda, who is always seen by the devotee whose eyes are anointed with the pulp of love. He is seen in his eternal form of Shyamasundar, situated within the heart of the devotee. At this stage, Lord Krishna never disappears from the sight of the devotee, nor does the devotee ever lose sight of the Lord. In the case of a yogi who sees the Lord as Paramatma within the heart, the same applies. Such a yogi turns into a pure devotee and cannot bear to live for a moment without seeing the Lord within himself. So, there's one change here. In that stage, the living entity can never be annihilated. But we already learned that back in chapter 2. I mean, realized or not realized, right? The Jayate Mrite Vakadachan. So what is that? So I think we took from the spiritual, the merge in Krishna is spiritual annihilation. So, I forgot, but I'll check my files and tomorrow, the class. But that's there. And then the also thing is, the Lord never disappears from the sight of the devotee, nor does the devotee ever lose sight of the Lord. Well, that's saying the same thing, right? The Lord never disappears from the sight of the devotee, nor does the Lord ever lose sight of... Well, wait a minute. Anyway, it's been fixed, and I'll also explain that one. But the whole point here is that your vision is changing. That's the theme here. You see Krishna in everything in Krishna, and you see Krishna everywhere, because again, everything is a manifestation of Krishna's energy. And when you see some living entity, whether it's a tree or a bird or a fish or a human being, you see, oh, there's the super soul in there, you see. And they're also moving according to their consciousness and according to their karma, and the whole thing is under Krishna's control. Just like if you go into a big factory somewhere, and you can understand, okay, this factory is working very nicely, and you appreciate the owner and the engineers who set it all up. You see their intelligence working, how everything is, that's the whole idea. So that's why Prabhupada, he was so adamant about this, life comes from life thing. If you think about it, the human body itself is a tremendous argument for the existence of God. The complexity, the whole phenomenon of consciousness. They don't know how the brain works. They can describe how it works, but really, the consciousness, how that works through the brain, and all these things. But somehow, it's just an amazing construction, and not just human bodies, all the other animals and everything. So that itself, wherever there is the organization and the evidence of intelligence, there has to be a person behind it. But Narayan Swami loved to give this, the class, proving the existence of God by the complexity of the world, and it really is, because there's so much evidence of, as my old friend Sadhguru would say, information. He was a first top flight mathematician. He wrote a book. His first book was demonstration, I think, or proof by information theory that life cannot arise from matter, or something like that. And it was filled with all kinds of equations and everything, that you couldn't understand. But the basic point is that when there's a whole lot of information and organization somewhere, that means that there's an intelligence behind it. And when there's intelligence, there's a living being. Not necessarily a human being, but a living being. And that means that there's a God, you see. To try to think that all this came about by accident, it's absurd. That all of the human brain and all of this consciousness just, millions and millions of years and by chance. No, not possible. It doesn't make any sense. So if there's a God, as our old friend George Harrison used to say, I really want to see him. Don't we really want to see him? You should. We should want to see him. Yeah, we will see him soon. The idea is, why are we here? Because we didn't want to see God. And we didn't want God to see us. We wanted to go and be independent. But it's not possible. You're still going to see God, but you won't know that it's God. You won't be able to recognize Him in His creation. But as you become more Krishna conscious, then your vision will change. What is that famous verse? Atakshi Krishna namadi nabhaved grayam indriyai. He says, there's some verse before, this is more, Dr. means therefore, Sri Krishna namadi, Sri Krishna's name, etc. What's the etc.? Form, qualities, and pastimes. Name, form, qualities, and pastimes. That more or less defines a person, see? And, but we can't perceive that with our present senses. That's what it is saying. Atak Shri Krishna nama nabhaved grayam indriyai. Graya means to grasp, just like we have in English. You say, I understand. I think I grasp what you're talking about. You see? Grasp can be mean. So the same idiom is there in Sanskrit. Then grayam indriyai. But sevan mukhehi jivado. If you serve Krishna beginning with the tongue. Yeah. Jive. By chanting Krishna's name and tasting prasadam. Is it? And then everything flows from that. Svayameva sparatada. The Lord will manifest Himself to you. In other words, gradually you'll see Him manifested everywhere. You see, being pure and pure, enlightened and something like that. So we can't expect to see God right away, but He's so kind, He comes in the form of the deity so we can see Him and serve Him. And He comes in the form of His name so we can hear Him. Prabhupada would always say, why are you only thinking, that can you show me God? So, well, do you have the eyes to see God? You see, that's the point. But then why should you emphasize the seeing? What about hearing? You can hear God. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You see? And by the hearing, you'll eventually be able to see. You'll see everything as a manifestation of God, including ourselves. So this is a beloved verse, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena. The eyes anointed with the salve of love, of prema. Bhakti Vilochanena. Santa, the saints, same word. The saints, the devotees, sadai, always in the heart see the Lord. What form of the Lord? Shyama Sundar, the most beautiful, attractive form. Achintya Guna Sarupam, who has inconceivable, wonderful qualities. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamha, I worship Govinda, the prime of the Lord. So, any question on this particular verse? We can proceed. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Daniel.
I just wanted to mention that there's a...
Oh, the mic. Give him a mic, because we have an audience out there too.
Speaking of proof of God, proof of Lord Krishna through the creation, through the intelligence behind creation. There's a series I was watching on YouTube called Logica Spiritus. And so if anybody's interested, it's like 16 videos or something like that. And it goes pretty in depth, and it goes and debunks a lot of the science and the atheism that's out there. Yeah, Logica Spiritus.
All right. I'm going to look it up. Hope I can remember my Latin. Logica Spiritus. Okay.
I just want to ask, so what is spiritual annihilation, and why don't we want to merge with Krishna, or is that even possible?
Well, spiritual annihilation, you still exist, but your spiritual life is gone. We more or less have been living in that state until we heard about Krishna. And I certainly was. I was a total atheist. So there's no annihilation for the soul, spiritual or any other kind. But the spiritual annihilation, it's like, okay, well, if I now, I've turned away from Krishna, I'm not going to do any Krishna consciousness anymore, I had a bad experience or something. So then what? What if then you're back into the rigmarole of birth, death, old age, and disease. And, the ABCs of the Krishna conscious philosophy, you may very well lose this human form of life. This is one of the most important things, to recognize the great value of having a human life, and along with association and some involvement. Even if it's just some preliminary interest, it's like the most valuable thing in all your births. Who knows how many millions of births we've had to come to this point. So therefore, we should take advantage of it and try to advance as much as possible in Krishna consciousness. Try to go back to God in this lifetime. But it's so encouraging, even if we don't. I remember the verse, Neha Bhakramanasosti, Pratyavayam Navidyate, Svalpamapya Siddharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. That in this activity, this krama, this activity of Krishna consciousness, there's no loss or diminution. Now compare that to any other activity, some material activity. You may be, have all these ambitions, and you may actually succeed, in making a lot of money, or becoming a wonderful musician, or whatever is your aspiration, But it's all lost when you die, All of that, those billions you may have made, there's a name on those in the bank account. And that name belongs to your body. And when that body dies, you're separated from it, you're back to zero, And who knows where you're going, and because what you had to do to become a billionaire. So the idea is that this human life, we're so fortunate having had come in contact with this. Just walking into the temple, seeing the deity, hearing the Hare Krishna, maybe chanting a few mantras, and you walk out and you never come back again. But that's in your bank account. You're going to be a human being in your next life, and you're going to come in touch with the devotees again. So that's spiritual annihilation just means more or less the life that you live completely devoid of Krishna consciousness, and it usually leads to subhuman life, because especially in this age. So there's no there's no annihilation period. I mean, in the actual sense of it, meaning the soul never dies. But we want to direct our energies in such a way that we can return to our original state, which is this blissful existence of serving Krishna every day, every moment, in all varieties of ways, and participating in his lila and feeling blissful. Sukham akshayam ashnute, we learned that in the last chapter. Unbroken happiness. You can't find that on the material plane. So the hard part is to have faith in that. Sustained faith that can sustain your struggle to get steady in sadhana. So you can feel the advancement happening, and very encouraging. Hey, there's no loss, and we shouldn't think, well, okay, then I can do anything I want. No, because there is postponement, because you'll suffer a lot. I mean, just on a factual basis, how many disciples did Prabhupada make? Almost 5,000, I think, between 4,000 and 5,000. So it was a wonderful community. I highly recommend, by the way, this series on YouTube called Following Srila Prabhupada. There's I think 7 CDs that were made into them. I remember when I have all the CDs that came out, MP3s. But especially this one, the 1970 Ratha Yatra. Oh my God, it's incredible, It's there's all kinds of, and when you see the Ratha Yatra, it's like the height of the hippie era, and Prabhupada is there, and there's literally thousands and thousands of people coming, through the park. And they had a problem with Balaram's cart, the axle broke, and they just had 2 carts. And then Subhadra's wheel bent because the axle was made of malleable, God. But then Narayan, who was one of the engineers, he realized he had all this manpower. He says, I need 50 people to lift Subhadra's cart, and they all came forward. Now I need another 50 people to bend the wheel back, and they did. They actually fixed it. They didn't show that, but he described it. His parents came. His father was a Holocaust survivor. You remember that? Do you remember seeing it? And so he said, "Okay, I'm going to paint the horses, because they had horses at the front." I don't think we do that anymore, at least not in LA Rath Yatra. But I was at the first LA Rath Yatra, 77. It's almost 50 years now. And I swear to God, as Krishna is my witness, we had elephants walking on Venice Beach. At least one elephant. I think there were two. Small ones who fit, And that was pretty amazing. The first two Rath Yatras, they did that. But anyway, this in the 70 Rath Yatra, and there was a threat from the Black Panthers. I don't know if you know the Black Panthers in the height of the 60s. They became prime, and they were like militant, and they said, "No, this park is our territory. You can't have it." And they were threatening. So Brahmananda pleaded with him, don't go, it could be dangerous for you. So Prabhupada said, no, I'm going. He didn't want to hear about threats or anything. So Gargamuni drove him, but he drove very slowly, and he circuitous route. So Prabhupada wasn't there at the beginning of the procession when there was an altercation. Luckily, we had these big poles, you ever see, to prevent people from jumping under the wheel. Did you know that? So we had some, 3 or 4 guys with those. They were fending them off, There was a rumble. We had some tough guys and everything, so it was over. So Prabhupada arrived in the middle of procession. Everything stopped, and they show him. and Bhavananda, he was a designer, So he bought Prabhupada this silk peach-colored thing, And Prabhupada had told him, "As you dress me, I shall dance." So it shows him dancing, and there's Hayagriva playing the drums. And thousands of people. Anyway, it's a wonderful. The whole series is wonderful, but that's my favorite. So it's all on YouTube now. You can see it, and it starts in the chronologically. There's the 22nd Avenue and how that developed and everything. It's really wonderful. All right, it's almost 8 o'clock. Shall I do one more? All right, let's do another one. Sarvabhuta stitam yo mam. Bhajat famastitaha sarvata vartamanopi sayogi mahivartate. Such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that I and the Supersoul within all creatures are one, remains always in me in all circumstances. Purport. A yogi who is practicing meditation on the Supersoul sees within himself the plenary portion of Krishna as Vishnu, with 4 hands holding conch shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower. The yogi should know that Vishnu is not different from Krishna. Krishna in this form of Supersoul is situated in everyone's heart. Furthermore, there is no difference between the innumerable supersouls present in the innumerable hearts of living entities, nor is there a difference between a Krishna-conscious person always engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and a perfect yogi engaged in meditation on the Supersoul. The yogi in Krishna consciousness, even though he may be engaged in various activities while in material existence, remains always situated in Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.187 of Srila Rupa Goswami. Nikalashrapyavastasu jivan mukta sa uchite. A devotee of the Lord, always acting in Krishna consciousness, is automatically liberated. In the Narada Pancharatra, this is confirmed in this way. Dikkalad yonavachinne Krishne cheto vidhayacha tanmayo bhavati chipram jivo brahmani yojiyet. By concentrating one's attention on the transcendental form of Krishna, who is all-pervading and beyond time and space, one becomes absorbed in thinking of Krishna and then attains the happy state of transcendental association with him. Krishna consciousness is the highest stage of trance in yoga practice. This very understanding that Krishna is present as the Paramatma in everyone's heart makes the yogi faultless. The Vedas, Gopaltapani Upanishad 1.21, confirm this inconceivable potency of the Lord as follows. Eko pisan bahodayo vibhati. Although the Lord is one, he is present in innumerable hearts as many. Similarly, in the Smriti Shastra, Matsya Purana, it is said, Eka eva pado Vishnu sarva vyapi nasangshayaha Aishwaryad rupam ekam cha suryavat bahudeyate. Vishnu is one, and yet he is certainly all-pervading. By his inconceivable potency, in spite of his one form, he is present everywhere, as the sun appears in many places at once. Okay. So Krishna is, of course, non-different from the Super-Soul. Generally, the yogis, they're practicing this meditation. And so their goal is to be able to visualize the Super-Soul and see the Super-Soul within. And in the process of doing that, sometimes they, get siddhis, different powers. And the challenge for the yogi is not to get swept away by those powers and start to try to use them for, transcendental sense gratification or something, whatever it is. And we see that the character of the yogis, how many, yogis do we find in the Bhagavatam who didn't really make it, There's Durvasa. I always thought Durvasa, because I don't know Sanskrit, but Vasa, I know there's something have to do with clothes. Durvasa, his clothes are far away, so there he's naked. No. Durvasa means difficult to live with. Yes. That's it. And Durvasa Muni, what did he do? Come on. He's so envious of this king, Ambarish, that he decides to burn him alive, through creating this Kritya, female fiery demon from his hair. What is that? And then he becomes, he does a favor for Duryodhana by trying to trick, goes out in the forest with his 60,000 disciples at lunchtime, right? And they say, of course we'll serve you, and be sure to go after Draupadi has finished cooking, because as long as before she eats, because she can feed as many people as you want, until she eats. But once she eats, it's over. So he came on the scene, after she and everyone else was finished. And although, okay, why don't you take a bath with your disciples in the river, 60,000 disciples, and we'll have everything ready when you come out. But then they say, what are we going to do? We got nothing left. So Krishna appears, and he always comes at the critical moment. He says, well, let me have some of the prasadam. He says, there's nothing left, Just check the pots, So he finds there's always something left in the pot, right? This is a little sabji. Give me the sabji. So he gives the sabji, and as soon as he eats that, all those 60,000 disciples felt that they had eaten a huge feast, Janmashtami feast or something. So they felt embarrassed. They can't go out there because they couldn't eat anything, so they snuck away. So how did I get from this verse to that? I don't know. I think the point is that it's one thing to realize the Super Soul. It's a wonderful victory to be able to commune with the Super Soul. But developing your pure love for Krishna is definitely a step higher, because it completely fulfills the desire of the soul. You're back home. Even before you go back home, back to Godhead, you understand your relationship with Krishna, you're relating to Him on that level, and appreciating the name, form, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna at every moment. So that's the state. And we have so many acharyas. Just today we're reading Vangshidas Babaji. He was also a bit of an avadut, And at one point, I think Bhaktisiddhanta told his disciples not to go to him because they wouldn't understand what he's doing, and they may become critical in mind, But he was, an amazing figure. And there's so many, and we can become inspired. Well, it's not impossible. We've got this mercy from the great Acharya Srila Prabhupada, and he's given us the books, he's given us the temples, the mantra, the association, everything. So we should accept those gifts and take advantage of them and give them to others. And you can see these purports, Prabhupada has spent so much time in here, and he's giving, this is Baladev, a lot of this comes from Baladev Vijayabhushan. And Prabhupada dedicates the book to Baladev Vijayabhushan. All right, one more, text 32, and then we'll have a little poem to conclude. Okay, Atma Pamyena Sarvatra Samam Pashyati Yorjana Sukham Vayadi Vadukam Sayogi Padamo Mataha. He is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. Purport. One who is Krishna conscious is a perfect yogi. He is aware of everyone's happiness and distress by dint of his own personal experience. The cause of the distress of a living entity is forgetfulness of his relationship with God. And the cause of happiness is knowing Krishna to be the supreme enjoyer of all the activities of the human being, the proprietor of all lands and planets, and the sincerest friend of all living entities. Those who can know from the end of the last chapter, this is probably citing this 529, Bhoktaram Yagyatapasang Sarvalokamahesharam. The perfect yogi knows that the living being who is conditioned by the modes of material nature is subjected to the threefold material miseries due to forgetfulness of his relationship with Krishna. And because one in Krishna consciousness is happy, he tries to distribute the knowledge of Krishna everywhere. Since the perfect yogi tries to broadcast the importance of becoming Krishna conscious, he is the best philanthropist in the world, and he is the dearest servitor of the Lord. Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakritama. Bhagavad Gita 1869. In other words, the devotee of the Lord always looks to the welfare of all living entities, and in this way he is factually the friend of everyone. He is the best yogi because he does not desire perfection in yoga for his personal benefit, but tries for others also. He does not envy his fellow living entities. Here is a contrast between the pure devotee of the Lord and the yogi interested only in his personal elevation. The yogi who has withdrawn to a secluded place in order to meditate perfectly may not be as perfect as the devotee who is trying his best to turn every man toward Krishna consciousness. So this is what Krishna consciousness is. It's amazing because the mantra is so powerful and the process is so powerful that even in a short time you can become, you can go out on Harinam, you can go out on book distribution, and you become the dearest devotee to Krishna. And you can see those who are really sacrificing for that. It's having a wonderful effect on them. Okay, so let me put the marker in. How far did we get? So we're on 33 tomorrow? Okay. All right. So, a little poem. Here's one some of you haven't heard for a while. Manasiddhapandidishte labdhapatos midushte timadagahana rupe hanta sangsara kupe ajitanakadarakshahe tamundara daksham upanayamamahaste bhakti rajum namaste. Fallen in this deep and dark and dirty well of Maya, threatened by the snake of lust whose venom burns like fire. Helplessly I pray, O Lord, whose strength is ne'er in doubt. Place the rope of bhakti in my heart, in my hand, and pull me out. And I always like to point out that, okay, the rope of bhakti, everything we've got, the process, the knowledge, the association. What do we have to do? Hold on tight. Hold on tight by practicing strictly the process of devotional service. Okay, one more. Smita ruchi makadanda syandi vaktaravindam tapapadabadahang sanvishta gandham mukunda viduchata pashupali naita sarangarangam mamaridiyata dage sangam angi karotu. Now you have to visualize the beautiful face of Giridhari. From the lotus of your face, dear Lord, trickles forth the luscious nectar of the beauty of your smile. Your beloved, your exalted devotees, great swans, seek the fragrance of that lotus which does air their hearts beguile. Your beloved gopis' eyes, mad bees, taste the most exquisite pleasure in the lotus of your face. O my dear Mukunda Dev, I pray, may the lake of my poor heart be by that lotus ever graced. And on that note, let us adjourn, and we'll see beautiful Giridhari in a few minutes. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your attention.